video, me and my group mates will presenting our research project entitled of Factors Influencing Banks' Profitability in Malaysia. Before we go further, let us introduce ourselves first. My name is Nur Kamarina Hussein.
Hi, my name is Abdul Kadir Jelani Abdul Aziz.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Zarif Shamil Muhammad Arif.
And my name is Muhammad Zashamim Muhammad Yusof.
Without wasting more time, let's begin with the first chapter introduction of this study.
For the introduction, I will explain about the background of the study, problem statement, research objective, and scope of the study. In general term, a bank is a financial institution licensed to receive deposit and make loan. Bank may also provide financial services such as wealth management, currency exchange, and safe deposit box. There are several different kinds of bank, including retail banks, commercial bank, corporate banks, and investment bank. In most countries, banks are regulated by the national government or central bank. Bank play a role in the operating economy, and sound banking is a bank requirement for sustainable economic development. It is the most important part of the economy because it provides services for both consumer and businesses. The general term for bank's profitability is the measure of bank performance. Since it is the most prominent component of the financial sector, the bank industry is essential to determining the health of a nation. In Malaysia, the banking profit has displayed volatility since the US subprime crisis in 2008 occurred. Due to this crisis, the banking sector of many countries suffer huge losses. As a dominant financial institution, a bank's health condition is crucial as it will influence the general health of the economy. Most of the economic researchers has demonstrated that a highly developed banking sector play important role in facilitating economic growth. As mentioned by On Jin San and Teh Boon Heng in their journal, a bank is just like blood in the economic structure. As long as blood is in circulation, the organ will remain sound and healthy. But if the blood is not supplied to any organ, then that part will become useless. It shows that if the bank's profit is inconsistent, the nation economy will have difficulty to growing and expanding. Thus, this study aims to examine the factor influencing the determinants of bank's profitability in Malaysia, with the specific objective of assessing the significant factor in the bank's profitability and analyzing the relationship between independent variable and bank's profitability. As this research aims to determine the potential factor that might influence bank, the study emphasized the impact of non-performing loans, interest rate spread, gross domestic product, and inflation rate on bank's profitability in Malaysia. The quantitative time series model was adopted with a 12 years period that contains data on bank's profitability in Malaysia from 2010 to 2021. Besides, this research relies on secondary data from Banks Negara Malaysia (BNM), Bloomberg's, World Bank's data, and the global economic sources.
As for research method, I will be explaining the overview of methodology, conceptual framework, nature of analysis, and data collection method. In simplest form, methodology can be defined as a process through which a researcher designs a study by applying certain procedures or techniques to seek, evaluate, interpret, and analyze material about a topic in order to produce accurate and reliable results to address the study's objective. Now, let's take a look at the conceptual framework. Conceptual framework is the basis of the entire research, and if you look at the figure above, it shows the relationship between the independent variables with the dependent variables. The independent variables used in this study are inflation rate, net interest margin, non-performing loan, and gross domestic product (GDP), while the dependent variable is the return on asset (ROA). Next, we move on to the hypothesis development. So as you can see, there are 4 hypotheses formulated based on the study. H4 or null hypothesis shows that there is a significant relationship between the independent variables and the dependent variables. For the hypothesis 1, 2, 3, and 4, it shows that there is significant relationship between independent variables, which are inflation rate, net interest margin, non-performing loan, GDP, and dependent variables, which is the return on asset (ROA). For the data collection method, our data is getting from the year 2010 until 2021, which consists of 12 years period on a quarterly basis. In order to obtain this data, we are using a secondary data where the information is collected from the Bank Negara Malaysia (BNM), World Bank data, the global economy, and Bloomberg. As time series data consists of distinct and evenly spaced time intervals, it was the ideal option for gathering information and data for this research. Last but not least is our test consideration for data analysis. In this study, we are using the descriptive analysis, correlation test, and regression analysis. Descriptive analysis is a short descriptive coefficients that summarize a given data set, which can be a representation of the entire population or a sample of it, while correlation tests refer to measurement of the strengths of linear relationship using available statistical data, including the linear correlation between two variables. And for the regression analysis, it is referred to a set of statistical processes for estimating relationship between one or more independent variables with a dependent variables.
Chapter 4 will cover the findings and analysis of the research paper. This chapter will explain the descriptive statistics, correlation analysis, coefficient of determination, T-stats, and F-stats. Based on the descriptive statistics figures as portrayed, the skewness level of the return on assets, net interest margin, and non-performing loans shows a heavier distribution or more likely to skew to the right, whereas the inflation rate shows a normal distribution of negative 0.337. On the other hand, all of the variables portrayed a leptokurtic distribution, as most of the data is bigger than plus or minus 3 in the kurtosis analysis. Jarkubera is used in this research paper to determine the normality test of the data. Based on the p-value of Jarkubera, which is less than 0.1, it can be concluded that the residuals are not normally distributed. The correlation, on the other hand, is used to assess the relationship between dependent and independent variables, and also independent to independent variables. The correlation analysis between dependent and independent variables shows a positive relationship. The net interest margin shows a strong positive relationship of 0.9268. The correlation between independent variables portrays the same relationship, which is a positive relationship. Since the value of the correlation is below than 0.8, it can be concluded that there is no serious multicollinearity problem. The ordinary least square regression model is used in this study to determine whether there is a strong positive or negative correlation between variables. If all of the variables were held constant, the return on assets would increase by 0.1317%. Net interest margin shows a positive relationship with return on assets. A 1% increase in net interest margin will result in an increase of 0.3% in return on assets. Whereas the inflation rate, non-performing loans, and gross domestic products shows a negative relationship. A 1% increase in any of these variables will result in a decline in the percentage of return on assets. The R-square is valued at 0.8980, which ensures that all independent variables, inflation, net interest margin, non-performing loans, and gross domestic products, can be explained by 89.81% of the difference in the dependent variable, return on assets. Moving on to the T-statistics. By using the rule of thumb, the value of the T-statistic must be larger than 2. There are 3 significant levels, which are 0.01, 0.05, and 0.1. The inflation rate value is less than 2 and above the significance level of 0.1, indicating that the inflation rate has an insignificant effect on the return on assets. Whereas, the net interest margin value for T-stats is greater than 2 and below the significance level of 0.01, it shows that the variable has a significant effect on the return on assets. The same can be said for non-performing loans. Despite the T-statistics is below than 2, however, the p-value shows a significant level of 0.01. It indicates that non-performing loans has a significant effect on return on assets. And lastly, the gross domestic product for both T-statistics and probability does not meet the significant criteria, indicating that the GDP variable has an insignificant effect on the return on assets.
Hi everyone, for my part, we will move to the F statistics. A higher F value implies that the variables are significant, whereas a lower F value indicates that the data or variables are not. Based on the tested model, F statistic value is at 94.72517. After that, I will present the result of the analysis. Based on the result obtained from the analysis to the ordinary least square method, the outcome shows that inflation rate is an insignificant factor affecting the return on asset. This is because significant level of the inflation rate is above the significant level of 0.1. Conversely, net interest margin is shown to have a significant positive relationship in influencing the return on assets. The result is aligned with the study of Khan and Sata in 2014, in which the outcome shows there is positive significant relationship between net interest margin and bank's profitability. Moreover, the analysis on non-performing loans shows that it has significant positive relationship on affecting the return on assets. Non-performing loan, as Michael in 2006 points out, have an impact on the banking sector's entire routine, putting it at risk of insolvency. Lastly, gross domestic product (GDP) is found to have an insignificant relationship with return on asset. In other words, the GDP is negatively related to bank's profitability. The insignificant relationship is proven by the study of Ramadan in 2011, which the failure of the banks to gain from economic expansion may be attributed to the emergence of new banks, which generate more fierce competition. Now we will move on to the chapter 5, which are conclusion and recommendation. Based on the drawn conclusion from the objective of the study, it can be concluded that the net interest margin and non-performing loans are significant to the bank's profitability in Malaysia. Hence, bank industry plays an important role in maximizing the net interest margin and at the same time minimize the number of non-performing loans in Malaysia. This is because, in a larger scale, the non-performing loan will influence the bank profitability in Malaysia. Last but not least, we would like to give some recommendations for further studies. Based on our findings, it is recommended that the sample selection should be more diverse by integrating additional bank institutions from various countries. With a diverse variety of banks in each country, the study will be more effective since the data collected is more accurate and will have a substantial impact on the research outcomes. Additionally, the research is advised that the period of data collection to be extended as well as the frequency of data collection to be modified, since greater data would provide a more accurate outcome of the research. Finally, by introducing another independent variable, the researcher may obtain a different result. By integrating additional determinants, future researchers and students will be able to use and refer to the findings as a complete and credible study.